This conference will now be recorded.
Your mic, what about it?
Face it.
I want to be heard.
The time being 7:02, we'll bring the November 10th Budget Committee to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, why don't we we'll put the minutes off and we'll just get Beth Hayward and Cap up here to.
Hello, everybody.
Good
to see
evening.
everybody.
Yes.
Thank you guys for speaking to me.
Sure, yeah.
So our request is the same as last year, $12,000.
Uh-huh.
I have the summary of services so you guys can see each, the big difference this year would be the UCARES COVID-19 money, which last year when I talked to you guys we were running currently.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was from July 1st to December 31st. And that was rental assistance, utility assistance, anything having to do with housing. So that's the biggest change you will see is that amount of money. And right now we have the emergency rental assistance program that is running, and those numbers are not on here because that program started in March and that program goes for another year and a half. So that will be reported out when that program is done. So that's the biggest change for services. Last year I talked about how COVID had really made us have to change our business model and how we had to do a lot of email through the mail. We are back open fully. We are offering in-person appointments, but I will tell you, most people do not want to come see us. Most people have enjoyed through the mail and not having to make the trip. Fuel assistance is not officially open yet, although many people have applied. It will open December 1st, and people that have applied and have been pre-accepted will then become enrolled, and they will, they will get their letter stating what their benefit is for the season. Electric assistance is year-round, so people can apply for that at any time. And the other big difference is we actually no longer have the security deposit loan program. That funding was pulled. The state is trying to get it back, but that's one of our bigger programs.
What was that? What did that
So
do?
security loans. So basically, if you found an apartment but you couldn't afford the double payment,
Okay.
we could help with that security
Oh, okay.
loan. That deposit was a
Security
loan
deposit.
you could, yep.
Is that state or federal funded?
So it's federal funded to the state and then to us. But the state has applied for other funding and we're waiting to hear back because that is a pretty big loss. A lot of people who aren't eligible for a lot of other services would apply for that because they can afford their rent. It's just that initial larger amount of money that they struggle with. So that's the only other change. I don't know if anyone had questions.
So you're getting COVID money this year, this time again, or?
Yep, so it's rental assistance money. So it's money for very specific rental assistance services. And that program is run out of Suncook. It's all online, it's a website, and it's all done through email and mail. And that program, the end date of that program is 2023, the end of 2023 as of right now. So
What kind of money are you getting for that?
so the state, the state as a whole since March has spent about $50 million.
50 million?
In services. And you can actually, the Gopher has a website that can give you all
Sure.
the actual amounts. But that money, like I said, is good till 2023, and it's 18 months worth of services. So it can be back rent, back utilities, and perspective. For each individual household, it's 18 months worth of services. So.
Okay, anybody else have questions? I mean, I always look at the, I compare towns.
Yep.
And we always seem to be higher for what we get for money. Can you explain that at all?
What do you mean? I'm sorry.
Well, like, Belmont pays, they pay like 13,000 and they got 538 in services. We're paying 12,000 and we get what? 286,000,
Yeah.
like half of what they get.
And unfortunately, what happens is Belmont is so high because weatherization had like over $200,000 worth of services. And so that's what makes it difficult, is that they can truly vary between $200,000 and $300,000, which is why we struggle with setting a certain, formula, because it changes drastically from year to year. And so in that case, that number is a huge number, and it's skewed because weatherization, they did a ton of weatherization in that town. And we include that because to get weatherization, you have to apply for fuel assistance, and it's kind of the gateway into that world. And then Guilford, the two that are the highest, you will see it's because of weatherization this time. And that's this year, that's kind of what that looks like. And as you can tell, we do ask for more from Belmont. From Belmont, we don't always get what we ask for. We did not increase it all across the boards this year because we know everybody's struggling. We know that people are, towns are having a hard time too. So we're just trying to stay at our base funding so that we can just continue to function, as we are. And although we got a lot of money for COVID, it's not money to run the program. It's money to serve the people, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The administrative amount we get, the percentage never actually fully runs the program, unfortunately. Maybe someday that will change, but that's.
So have you ever based your requested amount on population? Because we all know that we could have 200 people for services here this year, and 1,000 could go next year.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep, we've never done it that way. No, not the time that I've been at Community Action. We have not.
So how does the weatherization come about? That Belmont would get that much more and we would.
So it's dependent on need. So if someone applies for fuel and they are some sort of an emergency, they have a heating emergency, or usually when you see these large ones, it's that we've done a big complex and that enough people in the entire huge complex applied and was eligible, and therefore the whole complex gets done. So Hooksett was a huge one this year. We did like 2 huge complexes. So when you see those jumps, that's how you get it. But just a regular person, it's by emergency, basically. Like you go up the list. If someone calls and says my furnace just broke and I can't heat, they go straight out and the audits start and that whole thing. But besides that, it's a wait list, and it's a very extensive wait list. If you ask people, some people will say, I've been on weatherization for 10 years and they've never called me, but it may be that they need, new windows or something that is in the realm of weatherization, not a high priority. And so sometimes people do sit on the wait list. And it's also dependent, weatherization is broken down by 4 different funding streams, and people will qualify for different funding streams. So you may qualify for one that has a lot more money in it than another one. And so again, that's another way that happens. And that's about the knowledge that I have with weatherization, not one of my programs that I run, but.
Okay. Anybody?
I have a question about staffing.
Sure.
So
Pull that up.
area operations manager was that consolidated with the area center director?
Yes, and that is actually Leah Richards right here is my operations manager.
Okay. So it's a new position, but not really.
Yeah, so because COVID made us become so much more centralized, having managers at every site just didn't seem to fit the model anymore, so that is why you will see once we had a manager leave, we did not fill it, and we were able to hire Leah. We do have some managers still at some of our centers, but we have consolidated some of them.
And then you have outreach float staff asterisk as a new position, but yet it was funded last year.
So yes, it was a new position last year, and then we added an additional one. And again, that is because it doesn't really matter at this point where people sit to process applications because people aren't coming into the center. So what we did is we had people that aren't someone that works specifically for Laconia Area Center and they're doing Laconia apps. It's someone that may sit in Concord and does apps from any town in the 2 counties.
Now you have a total of 3 outreach workers.
Yes. Yep.
What does the outreach worker do?
So their primary function is fuel and electric applications, and then Laconia is food pantry. Those are the 3. And then obviously the phone and anyone that comes in that needs services. And we do a lot of referrals to other programs.
Well, what's the difference between that and an intake coordinator?
So our intake coordinator didn't exist before COVID, and that is because every single app comes to Concord now and then is shipped out to the centers. And so she's the person that is taking all of that mail, taking all those apps, and she's a keeper of all of that.
'Cause that's almost a $10,000 increase. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I think we're good. I mean, see you guys on a regular basis, so.
We do, we try.
Yeah, yeah.
We,
Thank you.
and we
It's a
appreciate-
valuable service, I know.
and we appreciate the money that you guys have supported us for years and years. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without, you know, the
Sure.
support from Tilton. And you guys have always been super supportive, and we're very thankful for
Great.
that. We don't want to take that for granted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Have a good night.
You too.
Take care.
Okay, so now we can review the meeting minutes from last week.
I got them online. The only thing I see that's missing is that before we adjourned, we discussed the meeting tonight and having Public Works Director come and the information we wanted him to bring with him. And none of that is in here.
Yeah, I thought we had said that too.
I thought you said the 17th or.
Well, it was still discussed at this meeting. I may have the date wrong. But it was discussed here, I know, because I'm the one-
Yeah, I thought
I'm the
actually,
one that said we
actually,
could still have,
Lumped it into, when Bill asked him when they would be meeting with each department, wondered if something come in on 11/17, so I kind of probably generalized it there.
yeah, I thought I had said that we could squeeze them in with cap. But
but we specifically discussed the Public Works Director and the items, because I'm the one that said I'd like to see his 10-year plans, da-da-da-da.
okay, so we'll make a note that we try to get him in here next week.
It's hard because some conversations, some of us think are more important than others. You know, it's like when I used to take parks minutes.
I know, it's sometimes
And then,
hard to
you know,
decipher.
someone like me goes, "Where to fit that in there?" They're good minutes.
Yeah, any comments on the minutes? Looked okay to me.
Motion to.
Eric wasn't here, right?
I
Okay,
was not.
I'll
I was
second
here
it.
the one before.
Can't vote, I wasn't here.
Okay, so these people weren't here, so all in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
Two abstentions, and
So the vote doesn't pass.
the ayes have it.
No, because isn't it, the majority has to pass it.
Fails.
We didn't get a majority vote.
Aye, fails.
So let me give you,
I
that.
technically don't have to abstain though.
No, so you don't have to abstain from a vote on the minutes just because you weren't here. It just means you're not going to correct the contents because you weren't here.
I thought we couldn't vote on it if we didn't
No.
participate.
So when you're voting on minutes, you're correcting grammar, sentence structures, names, spellings, times, dates.
But aren't you also approving the content, that it's accurate? Because I
You
don't know,
can-
I
well,
wasn't here.
You can make a comment like I just did, but those who weren't here aren't going to change it. It doesn't mean you can't vote on approving minutes.
That's not my,
Well, we can put it off till next meeting.
And if you read 91A,
We'll just put the vote off
Well,
on these minutes till
until
next
Christine.
time. Yeah, just
I thought you
to,
were gonna say until Christmas. I'm like, oh, we're really putting them off.
Christine was-
okay, so let's bring Mr. Pearson up here.
Okay.
Good
So-
evening.
Hi. So you all have a copy of the departmental requests. And so just keep in mind, the selectmen have not voted on this. I also sent an email to the Board of Selectmen and Budget Committee tonight before you came, and there's a link to this document in there, so you can download it if you like.
Is that the one dated 11/4?
This is updated from
11:10.
11/4, so this is 11/10. There's a few minor changes to it. There should be, you have another?
Yeah. I didn't know he was going to be.
All right.
There we go. So
We'll value fund.
in any event, so I'm gonna just basically give you a 30,000-foot view of the departments and the requests. As I'm sure you'll be talking to, at least the department heads for the larger departments, and possibly others. And then I can also go through and share with you some other information on this. But basically, we're looking at about a 4.5% increase year to year. So the selectmen last saw 3.9%, but we're in open enrollment right now. So we have not only a lot of new employees, but we've had some changes in plans. So that's been the primary cause of that change. But the increase year to year, there's really one major change, which is the fact that we're starting to pay for our new police building. So in the long-term debt, you can see that the budget is about $130,000 higher than it was this last year. And if you recall, the whole plan for the building, repaying the building, we have a very good rate and term, but the first year we worked out interest only to keep it low. That was 21. 22 is interest and principal and partial principal. And then in year 2023, the third year and full year payment, we stair step into that. So in any event, that is one of the large increases there. In Public Works, which I'll go through, but essentially there was an error in the wages. We had a new employee that was to be budgeted that I did not budget at the time, and so we were off by essentially an employee's wages in the Public Works crews budget. But because of personnel changes during the year, we're not going to be over budget in that department.
That's a 31,000 here.
No, it's yeah. When you get down to that, yeah, I was going to go page by page. I'm just talking about the overall. In sanitation, the selectmen opted to extend the contract with Pinard. It was the least cost solution for 2022, and I discussed that somewhat last week, but this has the increases in there. We are having to pay for disposal of recycling, the actual cost. So before we had a cap into the contract, but now we won't have a cap in 2022. So we had to budget additional monies for the recycling disposal. I do anticipate that the board is going to want to discuss that at town meeting, possibly have the option of doing away with recycling, curbside collection of recycling, maybe expanding the transfer station some, not to the point where we have to spend millions of dollars on it, but in any case, we did go out to bid, and the numbers coming in are just really, really high for curbside collection of both solid waste and recycling, and really we've got it pretty good in Tilton. Between that and the amnesty week, we have the highest level of service, and I think as a result we have the highest cost. But in any event, so those are the really big budget drivers here throughout the budget. So if we start with the administration budget, and you will see in here the increases for some of the employees.
What percent COLA are you doing?
For 2022, the recommendation to the board has been 4% merit. So that incorporates everything. We had looked at a tiered structure of if you make over a certain amount of money, if you make under a certain amount of money. But in the end, after some analysis, the board really preferred to have a single rate.
4% for merit?
That's correct. So if you look at any of the inflation statistics right now, I think, I think it was this morning, inflation is at a 6.2 run rate for certain things. Social Security payments went up, I think, 5.2%, 5.9%.
After how many years?
Well,
20.
right. So in any event,
The cost, the consumer index was, if you
6.-
average the two together, it
6.2%.
came up to 5.25.
Yes,
Yeah.
but you have to remember that it's based on city living, which is
Uh,
higher.
no. So
Yeah, I
there
just
is
read that.
there is also a New England more rural agricultural. Well, there is. They have different cross sections of inflation numbers, but basically, last year we were at 2% merit. We brought it down because typically we've been at 2.5%. So we were originally recommending 3%, and with just what we're facing with inflation, we upped it to 4%. So that's the recommendation to the board. That amount of money. So what that
changes year to year.
Right. So what that amounts to is that's a pool of money based on eligibility. So an employee would have to be eligible for a merit increase. There are a few employees that aren't. And it does not affect the police union. So it's the union contract has its own increases in it. So but the merit is awarded. So it doesn't guarantee somebody's going to get a 4% increase. And there have been years when someone based on performance has received no increase at all, as I'm sure Catherine recalls and Eric knows. So it just really all depends on performance. So that's where we are with merit. And we don't break it out into a cost of living and into separate categories. It's just one kind of lump sum. That 4% is budgeted into this budget. So in the administration budget, there's really a couple of things here. The merit raise, you can see what's different about that is it's up about $5,000. We actually distribute the merits. The Board of Selectmen do a budget transfer from the merit lines into the salary lines so that the salary lines keep pace with the new salary and they don't look overspent by the end of the year. But in any case, office supplies are slightly higher. Salaries for, you can see town administrator and administrative assistant are slightly higher. So in most cases, there were about a 3% increase. The town administrator, I think, had a 5.5% increase. My increase in finance was 4%. So it was just all across the board. I didn't receive any increase for IT, which is fine with me. I think it needs to be stayed. But in any event, moving through here, you can see the dues that the town pays, and for our associations that we're members of. Postage we reduced slightly. The town administrator still wants to maintain a postage line in case we have to do any kind of significant mailings during the year. We did not have to do so this last year. We did reduce the printing for the town report. Last year it was larger because we anticipated more reports due to the PD building warrant. Many of these are much the same. Advertising, we went way over this year because we had a lot of positions to fill. And the positions didn't get filled right away when we were to advertise for them. So we had to advertise many times, more than what we would have expected ordinarily. In the equipment rental, that's for the postage machine and also for the folder stuffer maintenance. That's equipment rental and maintenance. In equipment purchase, we're looking at having to replace about 7 chairs in 22. And that seems to be the thing that's been that we've been going through more recently. There was a change in terms of the vehicle, which I discussed last week. So we no longer have a town hall vehicle for use for town employee use. We do have a vehicle that was donated, specifically restricted to the land use department for code enforcement and building inspection. And so because of that, we did up the mileage expense in this budget, and then also reduce the vehicle maintenance line to 0. The moderator, supervisors of the checklist, and election registration, these are all based off of the fact that we're having 3 elections in 2022 versus 1 election in 2021, and the resulting costs associated with those. The supervisors is based off of the 2018 cycle, but I think that's going to be fine. I wasn't able to get a figure for that as yet. FICA, Medicare, all these taxes, retirement, health insurance, it's all based off of the actuals and wages. As I mentioned, we're in open enrollment right now, and there have been changes, specifically even in the town hall. As you can see, there's an increase there that was due to a plan change. Overall health insurance premiums went down 8% for the town, which was fantastic. And you'll see that in some of the other budgets, that change. Let's see what else. Legal, we're not in a reval year. We had a lot of expenditures this last year. There was a lot going on in terms of legal services that were required. And so we've reduced that $5,000 for 22. Janitorial still remains the same. Minor changes in heat and electricity. As I mentioned last week, we did lock in for 4 years for our energy needs. And I think we've got a good rate on that. Town hall maintenance and repairs now we're on page 4. Town hall maintenance and repairs. So in 21, we had the air conditioning that was done here. We had some other projects that had been either encumbered or put off. And so next year, we're seeing a big reduction in that, down $30,000, and we're keeping $4,000 in that for any kind of unplanned maintenance that we have to do, building maintenance. The furnace is old, and that's always the concern. And we seem to go through periods where there's a lot of furnace work, service work. We haven't had that happen in the last year and a half or so. So,
This is natural gas with hot water.
Natural, right? Yeah. Let's see what else we got here. Then you can see we increased senior center maintenance slightly, just because of the expenditures that we've been experiencing there. And then you can see our insurances. Our workers' comp insurance went down. That's because of our experience and our rating with that. The property liability is higher because we now have a $4.5 million building that we added to our property liability insurance. So it all kind of evens out. But essentially, the administration budget is pretty much flat year to year in terms of budget. Town clerk tax collector budget is going down, and that's primarily because of the difference in salaries for the new positions.
Cindy retirement.
So Cindy retired at the end of September, and the board voted appointed Kim to be the town clerk tax collector, and assigned her salary at $63,001 on an annual basis. She will be up for election this next year. And the deputy, there was a deputy hired who is new to the town, and her salary was set at $44,000 on an annual basis.
Have the selectmen considered a wage for the town clerk tax collector position for the election if somebody is elected that has absolutely no experience?
No. No,
So it would be lower than this, it wouldn't be higher.
more than likely, right?
Say what?
It would be lower, and it would probably be determined after the election.
It can't be.
Uh,
The law
Well-
states the legislative body votes
Right,
on the town clerk tax collector's wage.
right, at
It's
town
not
meeting.
Set by the selectmen, right. So unless they have a warrant article or something that states that.
Well,
No, what
that would come up at town meeting once we know
Right.
that there's a
So-
new tax collector.
Okay, so they're
So you have the
ready.
election in
So we'll have the
January.
elections if somebody is, so is it fair
In
for
March.
somebody to run for
in
that
March, right,
position?
yeah.
And this came up when the position was changed
Mhm.
to a dual position.
Right, I
You
recall.
probably remember.
Yep, I do.
Is it fair for somebody to run for that position thinking they're going to be earning the, what did you say,
$63,001.
63, 1, get elected, and then get to town meeting and have that reduced?
Well, so they would have to defend or,
Right, but I'm saying,
right.
if somebody's going to run for that position, shouldn't they know
Well, even if the board
that it's
set,
a variable rate?
even if the board set some sort of range for the position, there's no guarantee that town meeting would approve such
That's
a
right.
range.
They could increase it.
They could increase it, they could zero it out, they could do anything, right?
Yeah, there've been times when people brought that up at town meeting to change that.
Right, but that
that-
was when, that was not a new person. That
No,
was
I
the same person.
know. But they still wanted to change
It
it.
was
They could change
already
it at town
accepted.
meeting.
No, you couldn't put something you couldn't advertise that it's this range, because then there
You're
would be an
right.
expectation that if I
I
don't
just
get this
think
amount,
it's-
I'd get that amount, and you can't.
I guess that they could refuse the position
Right.
after town meeting, but
Exactly.
I just think it's unfair. Okay, well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Conversation.
So in any event, in this town clerk tax collector budget is also the election preparation line, and you see that that's higher, and that's again because of the number of elections in the year. The deed research, we've been doing pretty well with deed research, and that's because our liens hit a 10-year low this last year of about 90, I think it was about $93,000 in liens, and they had been as high as $285,000, $90,000 at one point. So we really been very fortunate in that, but if things reversed, we'd be spending a lot more money in deed research and the leaning in deed research. So that's where that all gets paid out of, in that line. In the finance budget, you see your budget committee line, and that's for the stipends as well as for the for Lisa, your secretary, and then budget committee expense. Earlier this year, Christine and I both attended, although it was virtually, the budget workshop,
Mhm.
and hers was charged this line. I have my own line for that. So in any event, that's where that or any budget books or anything else would come out of your committee expense line. And then you can see the town audit, my salary, the town treasurer's salary, deputy treasurer was reduced slightly. And that's primarily because in discussing with the treasurer, we actually haven't had to call in the deputy in I think about 2 years now. And it's because we're utilizing an e-signature product that costs $190 a year. And there hasn't been an occasion where the treasurer hasn't been able to electronically sign or make accommodations one way or the other. So that was reduced slightly, and if nothing else, it covers the cost of the e-sign product that we use. You can see supplies, postage. My postage line sometimes gets used by the trustees as well as if things have to go out from the budget committee. That's generally where they're charged to, and those aren't significant, but they do occasionally use that. Let's see, training and dues. So the short-term, the debt for short-term interest. So while the tax rate, because I'm a citizen and live in town, I was thrilled to see my tax bill on the warrant, what it's going to be. And then I looked at the overall tax that we're going to collect now and in the spring of next year and panicked because we're going to have to borrow more money in order to meet our obligations from a cash flow perspective. So I had $18,000 in this line prior to prior to the realization of how much we're going to be short in terms of the cash flow. So if you recall, the first bill of the new year is at the same rate as the second bill or the final bill of the prior year. So we are not going to see any really additional revenue from tax receipts come through until the end of 2022. So in any case, so I upped that sum. It looks as though our TAN rate is going to be around 1 to just a little over 1%, as long as we can lock it in soon. But I am concerned because rates have been fluctuating, and the Fed has indicated they're going to stop they're doing their taper program where they're going to stop buying as much in terms of bonds. And once they start doing that, it makes you wonder if that lack of buying pressure is going to cause the bond prices to go down some and the rates to increase, because they have an inverse relationship, the rate to the bond price. So it just all remains to be seen, but this is based off of a 1 to 1.25% rate for the short-term interest. You can see the debt. We still have the USDA sewer debt, and then you can see the second year stair step into the full debt payment in 23 under the principal, and the interest. You can see the same breakout of that interest. And then in information technology, you can see the salary that I draw for that work. Hardware, I reduced some. We did a lot of upgrades this past year as we were moving into the PD. There were things that were planned and part of the project, so I was able to reduce that some. In software, I was also we had some software that was encumbered from the prior year into 21, which was the barcoding for the police department's evidence area. So that is not reoccurring. You can see the components here. So the PD is their IMC software, security and updates. Those are to protect our workstations. Assessing is the assess. That's Avatar assessing, Avatar tax collect, Avatar clerk. The accounting is MuniSmart, and iWorks is our permitting and code software. So that's what that line makes up. In services, so one thing that the Board of Selectmen moved, which was different from prior years, is the body cameras used to appear in this line, and I really don't have much to do with the body cameras other than provision them on the network at the PD, and that's for the docking stations. There's not a lot to do. I don't have any of the administrative rights to any of that equipment, nor should I. It's all evidence-based, and so the reason why it was originally moved in here was because of issues with the original contract not being perfected the way it should have been. So by moving it out of the PD and into this budget, then I had control over it. But that's deemed as though that's not necessary to do any longer, so that was moved into the PD's budget. Outside of that, I still have, this is network equipment, this radio recording device. It records all of our radio traffic at the PD. We have time materials on 3 enterprise copiers, 2 at the PD and 1 here. And then, actually it's 2 here and 2 at the PD. The consultant for firewalls and servers, that's my backup for all the most critical elements of our networks. We have our office apps, alert service, online meetings, and then the e-signature product. And then lastly, in communications, that's essentially our wireless communications at the PD, which is Verizon Wireless, and then all the fiber access. So we have the town hall fiber, PD fiber, which is all under one contract with Consolidated, and that incorporates also all of our phone. The phone is not directly through Consolidated, but we're using the connections, and we have a very low cost voice over IP service that we use.
So what does I thought all the fiber was installed in town hall and.
It is.
So this is what, maintenance of it?
No, this is the monthly charge. So, yeah. So, so just to bring you up to speed a little bit,
Can't go
when
back to smoke signals?
when we were looking at, and unfortunately, there's just not enough competition in this area. Where there's more competition, I mean, we'd be paying probably about 40% of this, and it will happen someday. There will be someday, hopefully, more competition, either through satellites or some means, but we're kind of at the mercy of the major player, and that's Consolidated. I have to say the service has been very, very good, and the speeds are excellent, but it's costly. The way that we afforded this, I had added up all of our costs for internet between town hall and the police department. I had added up all our phone costs here because we had all these old landlines here, and also our phone costs at the police department, combined it all together and came up with a solution where by putting in the same phones that we have over at the PD and then tying it in, since we're on a fiber connection to the PD, it's all running off of a phone server at the PD, and there's a backup phone server there. So we're all extensions to each other, and yet we're actually, I think the end result was about $108 more per month than what we were paying before. And it completely updated everything that we had in this building that was put in 2009, which needed to be done. At the same time, we were able to recable this building because we had some real cabling issues that went back about 20 years. And so everything has been modernized here in terms of the internet infrastructure, wireless access, and phones here in this building. But that was all part of that project. So I can safely say that it was justified on a monthly basis. It's just before you had all these little components that added up to a big price. And now it's just one big price that you see. In any case, in land use, you can see the salaries for the land use coordinator and technician. Very little has changed here. We did up the miscellaneous expense. The land use coordinator is hoping the selectmen will approve a purchase of a plotter and or plotter and scanner before the end of the year. Basically a plan printer. So it's a wide carriage plotter, if you will. And some of them have scanners. They range anywhere from about $4,500 to about $10,000. And the benefit of it is that you can take things, you can scan them in if you have the scanner version of it. Otherwise, you can take a PDF, you can blow up things for meetings so that people aren't looking at a really tiny thing. And it's different from just doing it on a copier and trying to enlarge something. This is taking the source and printing it in a larger
Taking
format.
a site plan and copying it.
Yeah, essentially, you could literally do that with
And you
this.
must do it to scale and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't see that amount in here.
It's not. Because as I said, originally it was in one of the budgets. The land use coordinator took it out because we believe we're going to be able to not have to raise and appropriate for that. And if there's money available this year that we're trying to see if we can do that this
So
year.
you're taking it out of surplus.
Essentially, well, within the operating budget.
Right.
So we're not going to overspend our budget, but
You might have enough money left over.
we might have enough money left over. And the board has not approved it yet either. So I'm just saying this is something that the coordinator would like to do.
So why has miscellaneous expense gone from 300 to 110? I mean, 1100.
Well, so I guess, and also the postage. From what I understand, the planning and zoning, and maybe it's just one of them, but they require everything be copied, put into packets and mailed to them prior to the meetings rather than email. Well, I don't know that the practice has changed, but otherwise I would have to defer to the land use coordinator. I can find
So
out.
why
but-
would that be under miscellaneous expense? Why would it be under postage?
Well, there is an increase in postage for that. I'll find out. I will find out.
Okay, thank you.
Other than that, as I just mentioned, I'm pretty sure one of those committees, and I don't know if it's the zoning board or the planning board, one of them, I'm pretty sure they're still doing that, having to do the packets. Education, I think this was increased slightly. We have a new building inspector, and our land use technician was looking to do more training. Let's see, all the rest of this is pretty much the same professional consulting. The salaries for the planning board, zoning board, that does include alternates. Code enforcement officer, this is a different code enforcement officer than we had at the beginning of the year. He's experienced, he has a set contract, so he works 12 hours a week. And you can see here the land use vehicle maintenance and repairs. So that used to be a stipend for the building inspector to use their personal car. So we're now have budgeted that for the repairs to the land use vehicle. Conservation Commission is flat for the year. They also have all their stipends budgeted, including their alternates. And then in economic development, so there's essentially $7,000 allocated for redoing the signs downtown. And these are all the parking signs that's intended to highlight and bring more focus to people with a consistent view and that are appropriate for the downtown, and also very clear to show where the additional parking is, since that always seems to be an issue. So that's $7,000 that's budgeted for that. And then there's additional $2,000 that's budgeted in this budget for general expenses for economic development. And then the planned charrette that had originally been encumbered for this year I'm anticipating that will be encumbered for next year, as it wasn't able to be held in September. There were a couple of false starts with that, and it was just deemed without the appropriate participation and buy-in, it didn't make sense to continue on with it. And that's a $6,000 expense. So their budget next year will actually have that $6,000 additional. So that should actually read I have a wrong note in there. That should actually read $15,000 will be their total budget next year. Once the board encumbers the $6,000. In the health and welfare lines, you can see the salary for the health officer. She happens to be present in case you have any questions for her. She has halved her miscellaneous expense line. Generally, that would be the water testing and other types of testing, or other things that she might need, or replacement for battery replacement for a camera, odds and ends, new thermometer or humidity reader, what have you. The senior executive committee, these are the stipends for the 5 members of the senior center that run the senior center. Welfare salary, that's our welfare director. That's based on a 20-hour week. And she has been working a great deal more out of the Family Resource Center downtown, where I think she's more accessible to clients. We've also discussed, she has the ability to keep office hours over at the new PD. There's certainly room in the interview rooms where she could meet with people. Parking's not an issue there. It's well lit. And you can see her miscellaneous administrative expense. The town pays for her cell phone, and In fact, I think the only reason why her current year is so low is that she hasn't submitted any for reimbursement this year. In the welfare general assistance line, so the welfare director has not only this line, but there's also a donation off budget where when she gets donations restricted for welfare, generally in the winter time, she'll receive maybe $1,000 or $2,000 in donations that people will bring in, and that goes into a separate off budget account that if she has something that doesn't meet the criteria for the town's welfare, but is an established need, she has that discretion to be able to use those funds for that, which is in keeping with how the funds were donated. Otherwise, were she here, I think she would tell you that the reason why she's so underspent is because she, people weren't being evicted. There wasn't a lot of shelter expense this past year. She has been having to spend a little more money recently on homeless shelters. They charge $25 a night now, and she was just explaining that to the Board of Selectmen this last meeting, and there has been at least a couple of $1,000s of expense in homeless shelters this year. Otherwise, she felt as though she can go into 2022 pretty flat, but concerned, that she has enough money if there were a lot of evictions or need for heating assistance that isn't available elsewhere. In the public works budget, so you can see on the second line there that, and I think Bill, you had already pointed out the increase of $31,243. That's not entirely the error that was made last year, but that's a portion of it. There are some increases in that as well. And there is one current open position in Public Works right now that has not yet been filled. So
what is the staff, including the Public Works Director?
5.
Including the Public Works Director?
How many miles of road did we maintain?
Oh gosh.
That's a trick question.
That-
A lot of
yeah.
these-
I mean, we do end up plowing some state, where they're traversing, but
Not a lot.
we have 13 miles of road.
I didn't realize that the director was long.
But we have
So-
to plow
so
the
he-
class 2 state aid roads.
Right. Well, so with the director, he's also the technician. So he's the mechanic essentially. And he's an expert mechanic. He
We
does all the
combined those- we
repairs.
Combined those
Okay, so you combined two.
a couple years
positions.
ago.
Right.
Yeah.
So he does all the repairs to the PD fleet as well as the Public Works fleet. You'll see that he has a couple of things on the schedule this year where he's going to be replacing the Peterbilt dump body. So he's incredibly resourceful, very capable. I think right now he's working on building a flail mower for their excavator. With some hydraulic parts and chains and sheet metal and I mean that's how he works. He's going to be building the new meeting room desk that's going to be in here, or meeting table. Going to be a U-shaped in this area, and that's going to be milled out of a tree from the island that has to be taken down. He was repairing the salt shed this last week with his own milling equipment in the back, doing their own boards and the previous Public Works director had informed the board that the salt shed needed to be entirely replaced. And so he's been able to maintain that. We have about 30% of our annual salt right now in storage. So, we're in a kind of a good place starting out, but in any case, so he wears a lot of hats and
We have 100% at this point.
well, I should say that going into the season, we had 30% retained from this last year.
Okay, that's good.
So you can see the crew's wages overtime, and I point you back to look at that 3-year average. We had some real issues with resource allocation in prior years, and he's done just an exceptional job. You can see this year we've only spent year to date $19,500. Now, keep in mind that's going to increase significantly if we have a lot of storms between now and the end of the year. But he really is very careful with his budget. You can see a merit raise pool. I'll have to put in the notes for these merit raise pools what the budgeted figure was in the prior year, so that you have a comparison purpose. It leaves the line for part-time wages open. He did try a part-time employee this last summer, but they worked 1 week and decided that wasn't for them. So he's had better luck hiring the right people, in the crew.
He's got a good crew.
He's
right
got
now.
a great crew right now.
Yeah.
Fantastic crew.
Yeah.
So all these other bolded items, these are all generated off of all the wages. Office supplies, you can see. So in the equipment maintenance and repair, he's planning on replacing the dump body because of rust on the Peterbilt. So he budgeted another $3,000 for that. Pretty much the rest of this is where's his uniform line? Yeah. So the electricity and heat, it does vary some. The building repairs. So he is going to be working on a ventilation system that, and also the garage doors do need repairs because right now there's some problems that he can describe for you, but there's some safety issues with them, and they're going to be able to repair these themselves, he sees. But the ventilation system is one that had been identified years ago and was talked about to put on our capital improvements plan. It was at the time it was $80,000 for the public works garage to put in a ventilation system, but that was the kind of commercial ventilation system that you'd find in, say, an auto dealership. And Kevin has a very clever method of doing this where, and he can cite where this is installed in other places, but when you talk to him, he'll go through what this is, but that's what that amount of money is for. In the uniforms, he's eliminating the uniform service. He had some issues with them this last year. There was, they had some fine print that didn't end up benefiting the town. When people left, we returned the uniforms, but because the uniforms were such an unusual size, the uniform company has a clause that required us to basically reimburse them since they can't rent out a uniform of that size. So
Because they had their name on it or something.
I think there was also that, but one of them was definitely I think a size issue.
The uniform rental thing is the biggest.
Right. So he's gone to providing $600 a year. It should
And they
hour,
rush
that's
it
a
out.
year.
The HR.
Yeah, that's YR.
Am I gonna charge them $600 an hour?
Yeah, no, and he's got it all planned out. He's got a great plan for it, and I think not only is he saving money, but I think they're going to be happier with it. So not any kind of change in gas, diesel.
So last year, we didn't have a lot of snowstorms.
Right.
It's not a lot.
Mhm.
Price is going up.
Mhm. He's aware. He and I have discussed it.
How do you get your gas? Where do they get gas? How do they buy gas?
He's already over.
It's all through WEX. So they can fill up at any location. There's a few that aren't part of the network, but and we don't pay tax on that fuel.
He's already over,
Yes,
and we're not at the end of December.
Yes.
And I know you probably asked him the same
I
question.
asked him the same question. He may end up increasing that. And one of the reasons is when the budget's developed, in fact, he hasn't seen, he may have seen this number. This just came
Was it
out.
due in August?
What's that?
Were their budgets due in August to you?
That's when the development started. And, but just to give you an example, there was just in the current week's manifest, a WEX bill. So that had, all kinds of gas and diesel for the different departments. And so that hit, because you can see these unaudited expenses are as of today. And so he hasn't seen that 12,573 number, but he would have seen the prior months, which would have been about 11, 11 and a half or something, somewhere in that neighborhood. But he and I did discuss it, and it may be that he increases that. That's entirely
We used to
possible.
have one, so we got away from it.
Did you?
We fill up at the state shed.
So,
And
yeah,
it was locked in at $1.96, but it said June 30th coming up. They're no longer gonna be able to lock in, and we're gonna have to pay regular rate.
Mm.
So we're gonna go from $1.96 to like $3.40, $3.50. So it's gonna be a significant increase.
yeah,
Go back to what?
there was,
Wex was awful. Wex was
You didn't
awful.
like
Like we had issues with them, like
really,
if it was like 1 day late, they charged you up. It was awful.
yeah, we haven't had any.
I don't know the whole story. I only heard it
Yeah.
through the PD, but it was
Yeah.
not worth the aggravation.
Hmm.
But we're much smaller than you guys,
Yeah.
so it's probably less bad.
Well, it's worked well for us so far.
Okay.
Yeah, and I provide a report, not in their format, but I download their thing and I put it in the report so the board can see by driver how many times they filled up and what the rate was when they filled up. They can also see the number of miles driven by car, and then it broken down by this vehicle, and these were the drivers and these are the dates. So they've got it both sliced and diced from either driver or vehicle. So we do keep an eye on it. In fact, one of the selectmen today was pouring through the detail of it. So it is looked at. But no, I can't say we've experienced those problems. But in any event, in radio communications, he zeroed that out. He feels that he's in good shape. There was a plan at one point to replace all his radios, but he's fine. Equipment purchases, we left that line open with $1. I think I mentioned to you in the last meeting that the board had approved the purchase of a trackless at $156,000, $116,000 of which is coming from the Highway Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, and the balance coming from the operating budget prior to the end of the year. So there is, within that $156,000, there are a couple of components that could be done separately, but we're trying to work it so that we don't have to raise and appropriate any more money, and that we can handle it through the operating account. And it does appear as though we're going to be in good shape. So, but that line was left open with $1. The training that he's got, he has 2 people that he wants to bring up to a CDL license. And these are 2 different licenses, and they need the ability to have someone that can pull the trailer with the excavator on it, because the excavator is it's got tracks, it doesn't have wheels. So, so in any event, he's got that in here. He has discussed with the board that were the board to agree to this, and this was approved, that there'd be some clause where if they leave prior to a certain period of time, they would have to pay back some portion of the expense of the training.
So is this training actual CDL school?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't think this town has done that before, have we?
No, we have done it with police personnel on certain things, but we've not done it at the.
Not for CDL.
Not for CDL. No, that's correct. The he also worked in a wage adjustment into his cruise wages that would kick in once one of the people has a CDL by the end of the year. So, but that would be at the very tail end of the year, and it was not a significant amount.
So it's like 5,500 or something.
One of these is,
7,000.
yeah, one's 7 and one's 3. So one of
Okay.
them has a certain level of CDL, but needs to be brought up to a higher level of CDL, and the other one doesn't have a CDL at all.
One has a CDL-B, and they're trying to convert it to
To A.
CDL-A,
Right.
so that we can pull the trailer
Right.
Mhm.
and not have to hire someone to move our own excavator. And then the other person is going to get their CDL.
Right.
And I don't know what, I think they go to a B. I don't know.
I think it was a B, yeah. But in any event, so that's what that is. The sand and salt, you can see where we are there. Road materials, again, just the materials they use, during the year for maintenance. There's street sweeping, let's see what else we have. Buildings and grounds maintenance increased slightly, and that's just based on their actuals. And I think also they're doing more than they ever have before, so that's also good. They did include in the signs and safety equipment, the high reflective gear. So that's a slight increase. Street lighting, that's just based off of our new electrical rates.
They're going up.
Slightly, and the street lighting, I mean, if we could at some point, get a grant to do LED lighting or something like that. I mean, it's very expensive, but there is a payback over a period of years, but it could take 12 years to pay back, to get that payback.
Highway street lighting?
Highway street lighting, yeah.
Isn't that what we pay public or Eversource?
Right. So, in any event, and there's the whole discussion of, why is this light on, and auditing, which ones are on, which ones aren't, which ones we're paying for, which ones so.
There was a
that's
conversation
ongoing.
some years ago with public service on the state DOT about street lighting. Because they were eliminating street lights.
Right, and I think there have been some eliminated, but but years ago, that was.
Yeah.
The one at the corners.
Yeah.
And I know of two that I've never seen on.
And I mean, just even walking down School Street here from Town Hall to the parking lot, I mean, you need a flashlight.
Right.
So,
I thought we were gonna install a light on the building.
it has been talked about. We have a camera on the side of the building.
We see that.
Camera.
We'll see who.
So,
gets hit.
We don't even have a light on our outside door.
well, those outside doors, I am bound and determined to get replaced, and we have them on a list of things. We're waiting on this. There was a grant that Ginny got for the town hall building and a building assessment, historic building assessment. But those doors, there's problems with those doors. The doors need to be replaced down there. I won't go into the details, but there's a security issue with them. And then also they're used much more frequently than they ever were.
I often find,
Yeah.
never mind.
Sometimes it's sometimes way open. Yeah. But in any event,
But the selectmen could choose to eliminate more light on the state highways especially.
it's a possibility, I guess. Yes, it is a possibility. Parks, buildings, and grounds. So I'm gonna just say, this is money that was set aside. I think it was 2 years ago, and you can see that they have overspent that this year. But I really think that we're getting to the point where, like other towns, that the Department of Public Works is going to be able to handle, buildings and ground maintenance across the town. So like Riverfront Parks Pavilion, that the park pavilion wouldn't have to, deal with it. So like I know we have a roof replacement and things like that that have to be
The
done.
park commissioners had a conversation with the public work director a month ago, 2 weeks ago,
I don't remember.
a while ago.
Yeah.
And yes, there was a lot more that he could do. There was
Right.
what do you want us to budget? What are you going to budget for?
Yeah.
And they've done a lot at
Yeah,
Riverfront
and-
Park. It really is beginning to look I don't want to say brand new again, but it's definitely been spruced up.
And I think there's a way to get to, where the Parks Commission is, primarily focusing on events and programs and things like that, and don't have to worry about the physical structures or the physical
The
things.
groundskeeping.
They can report things and.
Well, there was
pictures.
an agreement that came out of that so that we are still doing that work, but
Transition at some point. Yeah, I think.
no, I mean, I think the agreement was that these are the things he'll be responsible for, and
Mhm.
these are the things he'd like us to continue to
I see.
sub out. And
But
it was a nice
good.
conversation.
Well, yeah, and I just think from my vantage point, they're certainly they certainly have the capability of handling things.
They do.
Should it move that direction?
Mhm.
So, in any event, in sanitation, so this is where you can see in our sanitation agreement. So our agreements went up 2% with the exception of the recycling disposal, which falls under the residential solid waste. And what you're seeing here is our collection billing occurs prior to our disposal billing. So we are paying for our November collection, which is why that line is at 83% for both curbside collection, the last one and the first one for recycling. And yet the residential solid waste and commercial solid waste lag. Our billing for Wheelabrator is in arrears, a month in arrears, and as is our billing for the residential recycling. So in any event, where we budgeted $50 maximum per ton for recycling, we now are budgeting $100 per ton. It was within the last 6 months, it was as high as $140 per ton and as low as $43 per ton. So it's a wildly swinging market. It just depends on what it is. Because of all the restaurants that went out of business, cardboard was in short supply, and all of a sudden cardboard was spiking, and the rates were going way up on cardboard and paper products.
And what do we pay to dispose of regular trash?
$72 roughly. I forget the exact figure, but so that's, and we're going into the last year of the cooperative contract with Wheelabrator. So it was a 7-year contract, and this is the 7th year, 2022. So there will likely be changes there. Let's see, we did budget a little bit more money for demo material removal. That's really essentially Amnesty Week. And I have to pour through some of those prior invoices and see if some of that was more categorized as either residential solid waste. It would have shown under residential solid waste, but it's all through NRRA. They do the collection, they do the disposal and billing, and so that's something I plan to take another look at. But we did add more money for that. We are looking at a different kind of system where every citizen would be able to bring anything they want on a weekly basis. You'd get so many tokens at the beginning of the year for large things or small things, and then anything over and above that, you come into the town clerk tax collector's office and buy more tokens to take things in. And that's really to cut down on, when you have somebody coming in with a trailer load of shingles 3 times during the day on, during Amnesty Week. And, well, I've been storing them, and well, maybe they have, it's entirely possible, but, it's really difficult to police down there, and they're really not set to handle any cash or money. And I've been trying to get the selectmen for years to move that into the town clerk's office, because they are bonded, and they are, better suited to handle that sort of thing.
So they still take cash or they don't take cash?
They do take cash.
Oh, that's crazy.
It is
That's crazy.
crazy.
We did away with that 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have a square.
I've been trying for
We've
years.
been trying we've been looking at bringing a square to the recycling center, but the problem is you have to with being a town account, you have to be very careful how you set it up.
Yeah,
And we want to bring it to all of town hall and turn it into a huge project.
yeah. Yeah, we actually,
Crazy.
people were paying with Venmo and PayPal motor vehicles earlier this year. We ran into some issues with that, technical issues more than anything. And so you can still pay with PayPal, but you have to use PayPal as kind of your processor for other things.
You can do it online. It's in person when you're trying to.
Tim, here's an interesting thing I saw today. Just pulled it up here. Town of Guilford, 11 months of recycling on aluminum cans. They just sold it for a revenue of $13,000
Wow, nice.
in the town of Guilford.
Yeah, so, we still accept glass in our recycling flow, and glass is very heavy. So when you look at our tonnage in recycling, it's not a lot. We have about 1,350 ton total between solid waste and recycling. About 350 of that is recycling. So in any event, in the police department, so the police chief, so there are a lot of changes here. The chief is on a 3-year contract with a provision for increases during those 3 years. And of course, there are things that she has to do each year. It's not an automatic, but it does have the salary increases in over that term. Officers' wages, these are predominantly the collective bargaining agreement wages. There is also the police prosecutor is in here who's not in the bargaining unit, and that's that.
How many officers do we have now?
So there's so we have 3 open positions right now. Last week we had 2. So we have a detective open and 2 patrol. And that would bring us up to, with those positions filled, it would bring us up to a complement of 15 sworn people, which is the same as what we had in 2021.
Does that include the chief?
That includes the chief.
So 15
Yeah.
is the staff?
I better count that again. I'll have to count that before we leave, because now I'm thinking.
And that includes the prosecutor or whatever?
No, so the prosecutor is not a sworn officer. He's an attorney prosecutor.
Okay.
He doesn't carry a gun, has no arrest powers, kind of thing. So when we talk about sworn, those are they carry a gun, wear the badge, and can arrest people. Basically.
Is that what you said?
What?
Is that what you said, comes and arrests you?
Well, it has, they have arrest powers. So. Anyway, all right. So changes here. We had some changes in the support staff as well. In fact, 2 out of the 3 support staff changed, or 2 out of the 4 support staff changed. That is dispatch and also admin for the PD.
Which is normally 4 totals.
Right, so there's 1 admin person and then 3 dispatch.
Okay.
And then the balance are made up in part-time. Grant expenses, we
Can we go back to
Sure.
holiday? Why is the holiday increasing? We have more holidays?
So no, so the holiday, no, well, that hasn't been determined yet. I don't think it's going to change the number of holidays. We have 11 paid holidays.
You never heard of Juneteenth?
No.
It's a new federal holiday.
It is
Yeah, it's a
June
new.
19th.
Yeah.
What's the new holiday?
June
Juneteenth.
19th, Juneteenth.
Juneteenth.
For what?
They just voted it in last year
Yeah.
for what was it, the last slave or
What
Yeah.
is,
That's when the, yes.
When slavery ended,
Oh.
was it
basically.
the last day of the,
Yeah.
when it was final? Or-
When they started going into Jim Crow years.
all right.
Juneteenth, we got it.
So
It's on our
why
list
is
of
the
holidays.
holiday
Yeah,
line
Google it.
increased? Because this is contractual, right?
It is contractual, yeah.
So there would be
I
no
didn't ask
new
them.
because this is a new contract.
There's a reason. I'll have to get you the answer on that. It's not coming to mind off the top of my head. I can look that up, but I think it's because, no, I'm not going to answer. I have a feeling I know what it is, because of the number of patrol is different from last year. The mix is different in the overall department. So we don't have as large a command staff. We have a larger patrol staff. Command staff didn't qualify for holiday pay. But the patrol staff does. Does that make sense?
No.
So it's a different number. So sworn officers,
$8,086. How many more patrol staff do we have?
well, that could be an error too. So
A lot of holidays.
That's a lot of
holiday
holidays.
pay.
I'm gonna have to look at that. So
So
that could indeed be
On
an
the
issue.
holiday, you've got 25, 3-year, 29 budget, and 372. Is that it?
It hasn't been paid out this year.
Very
It's
nice.
paid in the second pay period in December in one lump sum.
Oh, I see, only 1% of it paid, okay.
Yeah, the reason why you see a small percentage there is
Yeah.
when people left at the beginning of the year, if there was, or when they left during the year, they may have been paid something.
Okay,
It was really dependent upon the personnel.
On your September 23rd incarnation of the budget, holiday police pay was $7,998. So it's gone up $100.
Yeah, so I'll have to, I will look that up, but in any event, just to move on here, sports staff wages and also officers' wages and the chief's wages, all those going down is because essentially higher expense people left and we hired less expensive people into the positions as a gross generality. Health insurance, there you can see the health line has decreased. A lot of the, I'd have to say the majority of the new employees are young and don't necessarily have families at this point. And then also we had the decrease in the overall percentage. Let's see. Prosecutor's expense, we do pay for his bar fees and some other things. That's part of his contract. You can see little was changed on most of these, except for the fact when you get to the PD equipment maintenance, repair and tech. So the body camera was moved, the body camera expense was moved into this line from the IT line. So they now have not only the body camera contract, which it's in the, we're going into the last year of the contract with Axon, which is Taser, formerly Taser. And my understanding is Taser's looking to have us move to new equipment prior to the end of the contract, and they'll prorate, that sort of thing. So that's going to be up to the chief and the board to determine, but more than likely it's going to be at a higher rate. This line also includes the some money for the vehicle inspection machine that's split between highway and the PD because we do our own inspections. And then the Taser assurance plan, that's the maintenance, and that's essentially the replacement plan for the electric, the weapon tasers. And then Cellbrite license, that is, it's a device that is able to break into phones, cell phones. So it can catalog all the text messages, deleted things off of cell phones, and that's used by the detectives. And that's a pretty big expense year to year. That's about a $4,300 expense just for Cellbrite.
Will you be able to put individual costs to these for the next go around?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Thank you.
I can tell you both. I think the assurance plan is that it's in the last year as well. So the assurance plan and the body cameras are going to change. And my guess is that they'd both be up, I would think. The issue with the body cameras is the cost isn't so much with the cameras themselves. I mean, there's a certain cost to those devices. It's in the storage and the licensing of evidence.com. So the nice thing about these body cameras is an officer's wearing it, something happens, they stick it in the dock, and it uploads to evidence.com, and they can categorize what this was. So if it's an arrest, it's retained for a certain period of time. If it was a felony arrest, it's retained for a longer period of time, depending upon what type of event it was. A traffic stop might only be kept for, maybe a month or two. I don't know the retention policy, but they do have a retention policy on these things. However, over time, you build up an extraordinary amount of video data, and it takes up a lot of space. We have 1 terabyte of data, and when we were running out back in the beginning of 2020, and I was approached by the then captain, I said, you've got to review your retention policies, and somebody's got to go through just knowing that there's going to be stuff out there that should have been categorized differently, or, they have to have a procedure by which they can make sure that they're not, retaining things that don't need to be retained. That's a very expensive part of this contract, the evidence.com.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the storage, it's all the levels of permission, and it has all kinds of incredible features where the attorney prosecutor can share certain evidence for a certain period of time with a defense attorney, and they can see the body camera video without having to download it, or so there's a number of things that are very useful for them, and it makes it easier for them, but it is an expensive contract. In electricity, so originally we budgeted 2021 based upon the engineers who designed the building, the electrical components, all the HVAC. This was based off of their estimate of what we would spend in electricity. The unaudited expense is not a complete picture for this year because there was a certain amount of money that was charged to the project line because we had budgeted for electricity in our, originally it was supposed to be, the project was supposed to be completed in December of 20. It spanned into February of 21, into late February. And so some of the electric, and this I have to say was probably the most expensive electric, because not only was it cold, but doors were left open for long periods, while things were being moved in or work was being done, and there was still a lot of construction happening at that point, all the finished work. So that the amount that you see there is not a complete picture. I've done my best to estimate what I think it's going to be based on our run rate since then for 2022. But again, it's still, until we're in there for a full year with real, experience, we're just not going to know. But that's my best guess. So I brought it down. You can see in the heat is up slightly, but water is the big change. We're having to pay a quarterly charge for sprinkler heads to the water district. So there you go. In janitorial service, we're not paying any more per cleaning. It's just the building is so much larger than what we were cleaning prior. And we don't clean every area every week. There are the evidence area isn't, the IT area isn't, the archive room isn't, the workout room isn't. So there's a number of areas that aren't cleaned on a weekly basis, but this represents the full year cost of janitorial service. Pretty much everything else in here, and I still have this caveat in here that the board had approved combining some lines. I just have to find the time to sit down and get that done.
You know what happened to uniforms?
Let's see, where.
It's over an $8,000 increase. And I thought we were on, you said there were 3 positions that haven't been filled?
Hang on a second, let me see where you are.
We went over.
New uniforms. So in the new uniforms, the board had approved, this is all vest related.
Huh?
Vest, bulletproof vest related. So with the number of personnel that have changed out, you can't always take a vest that with someone's vest before and apply it to the next person coming in. At the same time, the board approved a different design of a vest. So it's not the kind they wear under their shirts. It's kind of an I forget what it's called. It's an outer belt vest. So it has the protective pockets for the vest material, but also all their gear doesn't get jammed in like on their regular belt. It's a different kind of thing. And it's not a large cost, but it's a different form of vest, I guess is the best way to put it. And the chief would be the best one to talk to you about that, because I clearly know very little about it. So that is the primary reason why that expense was up so much this year, but we don't anticipate that being a repeat. We have, as you know, had a large turnover in personnel this year. Let's see. So vehicle maintenance was kept the same. Most of the maintenance money doesn't go, it goes into our frontline vehicles. We don't spend a lot of money on the detail cars. And even with the advent of purchasing some new vehicles, the board had approved the purchase of 2 vehicles out of this year's budget. We are having difficulty even finding vehicles. So in the 2021 budget, you can see the $70,000 was set aside for 2 vehicles, which when combined with the special detail fund of another $42,000 was the purchase of 2 Tahoes, fully equipped Tahoes, but we can't get them right now. And we're going through the process of trying to locate vehicles and also see how we're going to handle that. So there have been some, even when we were told there are vehicles on a lot and they're X amount of money, we just found out that that's not the case at all. They're not on a lot. They aren't available, and we're back to square one. So in this budget, though, I can tell you this much, that the chief wants to be sure that the townspeople see every year that there is a vehicle budgeted and a vehicle purchased for the police department. She feels very strongly about this, and she will be happy to talk to you about her plan for the fleet. Because I don't know much about it. So I know that much.
I hate it that you keep bringing it up.
Well, and just keep in mind,
thank you.
and I know that I mentioned this in prior meetings, but for Deborah's benefit, the Chief Cormier didn't want to purchase a vehicle the year we were buying the land, because he felt it wasn't fair to ask the townspeople to pay for a vehicle at that point when he was asking for land. The following year, when he was asking for the building, didn't want to purchase a vehicle. So basically, we got 2 years behind in a vehicle acquisition. So
Previous to that, we bought how many vehicles in 1 year?
Well, in 2006, we purchased, or 2008, we purchased 3 vehicles through a lease program.
Are you keeping the vehicles longer and putting more mileage? I mean,
No.
the newer vehicles can last longer.
That's right.
Well-
They were designed to last longer.
I mean, I know we used to always get rid of them when they had.
We can't talk
100,000,
about
but you
this
can do
now.
more
It's gonna
than
make me
that.
crazy.
Yeah, well, so the chief will talk to you about, when she first came in, she did an assessment of, everything they had at the PD, and the fleet was a big concern of hers. She felt the mileage was way over the industry standard, way over other local agencies where, they have a determination, they reach a certain level and they move it on to a different purpose. So it's not that it's necessarily out of the fleet, but the frontline cruisers need to be at a lower mileage. So, and I'll defer this to
Hopefully they
her.
will have stopped taking them all home, because we had a lot of cars going home.
At one point, we had
And-
5 vehicles that were take-home.
Take it home.
And to my knowledge, there's 2 currently. So.
And, you can't count that mileage in this.
Right, but it all
It
adds
said
up.
that.
Well, but those also weren't frontline vehicles either.
And how many miles of roads do we have?
13.
Yeah, we're 11.9
13
miles
town
at our
roads.
longest.
Right.
East to west.
Not everybody lives in town.
And we've, in my 20 years, we've never had a car on the side of the road because it broke down. Had a couple because it got crashed.
So, so I will leave that
And this
discussion.
budget isn't about what a department head wants. It's about what the townspeople can afford.
Well, but this is, well, I would disagree with you because this is literally what the department heads are requesting. And that's exactly what you asked for and that's what you're
Oh,
getting.
no, I agree.
So it is
But
literally
what ends up
what
here
they want.
is what the townspeople can
It
afford.
may, yeah, I'm not saying that, you know, I mean, this is all up for debate clearly, but this is what's been requested. So the only other thing I would say on the vehicles is that she did spend a good bit of time assessing things. She spoke to the Board of Selectmen at least on three times going through the fleet and the needs, what she saw as the needs for the fleet and what she wants to do as a plan moving forward. So they were in agreement with that, and they did approve at least, you know, the two vehicles to kind of catch us up to where we should be.
6 weeks will technically be 3 years of no purchases.
That's right.
19, 20, 21.
Right. The last vehicle we purchased was a 2018. So that was that's our most current.
And when did we get
vehicle.
it? And when did it?
Oh, it was in 2018. It was in the fall, winter of 2018. I think it was September-ish.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, the money that you see for the 2022 budget, the purpose there is one Tahoe, which would be outfitted at a cost of $61,000 between the unit and all the equipment, and then $45,000 or $47,000. No, I'm sorry, $45,000 to be from the operating budget and $16,000 from the detail fund. And we've had a long history with the detail fund revenues, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. We've generally averaged over 24,000. So if there's more money to come from the detail fund, we could reduce that. But there have been years when it's been very slim pickings, and you just never know. In any event, we did reduce she did reduce the legal line. There's no collective bargaining this year. There was a modification based last year on the sergeants leaving the collective bargaining agreement. That's all done. So this line was reduced $2,000. In culture and recreation, really the biggest things here were the park commission expenses. So last year in the $38,000, $12,500 was budgeted for a roof replacement, which to my knowledge hasn't occurred yet. So I had talked to the chair of the budget or the Parks Commission and told him that my intention was that we would encumber those monies because the roof still needs to be replaced or repaired, and that that would be encumbered into 2022. So the reduction that you see here is largely that $12,500 reduction with some other items that the park commissioners increased. Let's see what else here.
Island.
So
Happening with that.
Yeah, the island. So there's a grant underway for the bridge for the island, and then because Tilton now has sole ownership of the island, they wanted to keep, or the town administrator that is really, this is one of her main projects. She was wanting to keep the budget there so that they can increase the signage, provide better lighting and that sort of thing for the island. So we're still unsure as to what improvements the bridge is going to require. It is a one of a kind, and there's still work that we're waiting on from the consultants on the bridge, if I remember correctly. So
There's a grant for that, right?
there's a grant for some of that,
Okay.
right? For the consultant portion
Okay.
of it, yeah. there is not a grant for the rest of the, any improvements to the island. We also have a capital reserve fund for the island, but the thought so far is that that's going to be primarily dedicated to engineering to, remediate any kind of erosion and that sort of thing. And there's also a big DOT project that's coming down the pike that is going to affect possibly the water flow along the river. And so, there's a lot unknown right now.
I was looking at that the other day.
Yeah.
Are they gonna just bank up the river there? Or?
They're gonna, can I say? Yeah, it's not secret.
Yeah, I don't think
No,
it's
it's not secret.
They're, in a sense, in a nutshell, expand the land out about 9 feet, I think it is, move the telephone poles. So think about losing 9 feet of river
Okay,
and what's that gonna do?
Especially on this side, because it's going to direct the flow more directly towards the head of the island, which is
right,
already eroded.
yeah.
Right.
So
And there are baskets there on that
Yeah.
end of the island.
So their plan is next year, so I think it's, don't quote me, 542 feet of shoreline.
So there's got to be a lot of, I'm sure there are going to be public hearings and things, on that.
Yes.
They're looking for feedback
But
currently from
Not,
groups.
so not even just that, but the traffic nightmare it's gonna create.
All right, so.
Find a new way to Thornton.
So Tilton Events Committee, that was the 150th committee that put in for additional money to do events once we're out of this pandemic. Memorial Day, that's because in the past, we've really just pretty much put up a wreath on the monument out here. And they want to do more with flags. I don't know if you saw at Timetable Mabel where all the flags were planted, and each flag that was positioned in town represented 1,000 people that died in different wars. So in any case, they're looking to budget a little bit more money for Memorial Day. And the outside agencies, I certainly won't go through those because you know those better than I do at this point. And that pretty much represents our operating budget. I do think that we're probably going to be able to, depending upon the open enrollments, I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to get back closer to 4% once everything is said and done. And we get to, as we go through this budget process, I'd like to see it closer, the increase year to year, but that's gonna require about $50,000 coming out of this particular budget, and that's pretty much it at this point. That's the departmental request.
Great, thanks. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Good.
Very good as usual.
No, thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
You're welcome. I gotta look up the number of sworn officers.
I'm going to say we delay the vote on the other agencies until we get maybe a couple other. We
A lot
have
of
to
hard work is spent on it. I agree with you.
vote on, consider, we need to vote on the Community Action Program, VNA, and New Beginnings. And so next week, we will see if we can get Kevin in here. Who else could we talk with?
What else do we need to talk with?
15. It was 15.
15, including the chief.
Yes.
So typically we talk with highway, police, health and welfare. Well,
Every week? I thought we were doing every other week. No, every week.
well,
Because I can't be here every other week because
Yeah.
I have a 3 or 4 p.m. selectmen meeting.
Sure.
Well, 2 weeks you won't be here. That's Thanksgiving Eve, and then you have to get home and prepare for
No, I can be here for Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
No, that's not a big deal.
I'm not going to be here for that week.
Are we having one that week?
No.
No, we typically don't. Yeah. So that's why I was thinking we should have one next week. 'Cause we're
Well, if you
gonna-
do, I won't be here
Okay,
because I have a selectmen's meeting at 3.
you're excused.
Did
So I
you?
kind of want to hear I'd like to hear the highway and the TV, but.
They will all be recorded.
Okay.
Of course, you'll all be voting and discussing. I mean, there's a lot of time between now and I mean, you've got all of December, all of
Mhm.
January, before any public hearings in February. So a
Sure,
lot of time.
right.
Would you want to hear me come in sometime and talk about finance and IT, or are you satisfied?
You already have.
With what I've already told you, because that's pretty much all there is to say.
Sure, yeah, that sounds like you cover that pretty well every time.
Well, and you'll be forced to be up here again, I'm sure.
I'll be at, each
So
time
some
you have a
question-
department head in, I'll be here. Yeah.
So if a question came up,
To me, it's good to talk about the highway police and the health department or the welfare,
then what do you want to know?
but, huh?
So what do you want to know? I'm
Yeah,
down.
yeah, okay. But
Not much down.
what any other,
Well, don't those fall under the town administrator
The budget committee can call in.
Yeah. but that's
You know.
typically who we talk to, and we
Anybody.
don't have to if we don't feel like it's
I'll
necessary.
just put alternate.
But
Shut up.
I can tell you the welfare director just connected in last week with the Board of Selectmen, over GoToMeeting. And she spent maybe 15 minutes.
the most.
Right, so that might be a way.
So my suggestion is we have Public Works come in next week,
Police
not scheduled the chief
until December.
until December, so
Yeah.
it doesn't have to miss both.
Yeah.
And when we have more people,
We'll decide on,
we can ask them, when they've had a chance to look at the budget, is there someone you feel we need to talk to?
okay,
What do you think?
sure. And
What?
you can always update us.
Well, yeah, and I just wanted to say, in case the Public Works Director isn't available next week, for some reason, would you want to see Jeannie and/or the chief, like one of those department heads if the other one isn't available for some reason? I mean, there are things that crop up from time to time.
Well, the town administrator isn't really a department head.
Well, she has control over the administrative portion of the budget, so in that first administrative budget.
I present the administration budget in my town.
What
The
was that?
selectmen have the
I
control of the
present the
budget.
Well, of course,
administration
the
budget.
ultimate control, yeah.
They
Right.
have ultimate control of all of them, really.
Yeah.
But we're all relying on teamwork. So what do you think? If Kevin can't make it in, we should talk to Jeannie? Get a little rundown?
I always love talking to Jeannie. I'm serious. That woman has more information.
Yeah.
Knows more about the going
Sure.
ons and functionings. But unless we have real specific questions, I'd hate to see us waste your time coming in.
So you're gonna,
Okay, well, yeah, just,
I would say just talk to Highway next week. As Tim said, we have more time. And if he can't come in, then we just won't have a meeting next week.
okay, or the next meeting. Yeah,
I mean, we can always come in and, we can have a conversation about the budget we just went over with. We could start doing that if you wanted to next week, if Kevin can't come in.
talk about,
Well, what do you think? Should we,
Cap,
reduce
cap
this? What do you think of the merit line? It's 4%. Do you want it at
oh, okay,
4%?
yeah,
We can go line by line and do we agree with those amounts?
and we could review CAP and ENA.
Right, and we could vote on the rest of the outside agencies,
Sure.
kind of a housekeeping.
Mhm.
We think,
Okay,
oh, I guess you're the alternate, you're not gonna be here. So what do you think, Bill?
yeah. So if Kevin,
Actually, well, wait, hold on. Next week you won't be here either. Oh, no, you gotta do the double play. You gotta do 5 to 7, and then you gotta do 7 to 9. Because someone thought that would be a good idea, so.
I asked you, you said it.
Well, I didn't think about this committee because I'm the alternate.
Okay, so we'll just schedule Kevin. If he can't, we will do housekeeping. That sounds great for next week.
You can let him know that I'm gonna ask about his, I'd like to see these 10-year plans.
Did tell.
Okay, so
That's what we do.
what is it?
Do you have any comments?
Road,
on
sidewalk.
Any of the
Equipment.
DNA or
Just that
TAP?
one?
Yep. If you have any,
Streets.
No, I don't.
yeah,
Yeah, roads and
I mean,
sidewalks.
pro or con,
Road,
or,
bridge, and sidewalk, equipment.
something we can add in case we talk about it, you're not here.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I
But-
did,
Okay,
I
big.
talked to Paul from Lockmere.
Pardon me?
Paul from Lockmere, I was trying to get hold of him. And he left me a message afterwards and said he's not requesting anything from them. He doesn't need anything.
So we have to approve his budget.
And we usually do that without anybody here anyways. I mean, we just look at it and say, okay, because it's kind of a pass-through budget.
There's no such thing. It's not a pass-through
You have to
budget. If
sign
you
it.
read
You
32,
have to sign the 737.
if you
Right.
read 32, you look at that budget, and if you don't agree with an amount, you can say, no, I don't approve that amount.
Because you have to sign it. You have to sign it. So
So it's
Well,
not a
see, that's
that's what
pass-through.
he will come in to get your signature.
Well,
Right.
actually, we signed
If
it
he wants
without
to
him,
get it.
without him in here. Last year, I don't think he was here. We,
He needs to know that he needs to get our budget in here, his budget in here in a timely manner. Because we're not just going to sign it and send it. It's not a pass-through budget. It's a district wholly within the town of Tilton,
Oh, I know.
okay? Well,
So
they
you
do
want
this
him on the
every
next meeting?
year.
You want him in here for the next meeting?
They do this every year.
When do you want him in here?
Who, Paul?
Yeah.
He said
You-
he's not meeting.
He doesn't have a choice.
Yeah, he doesn't. Chapter 32, tell
I
him to
didn't know
read
what
it.
he was talking about when he said that.
Tell him that the committee. is
He's a very
requesting
nice
his
man.
presence.
He's very nice. yeah.
He's a very nice man. I just-
If you shoot me.
Otherwise, we'll send the police in the new Tahoe. and get 'em.
yeah, there you go.
Oh, wait, we
So
can't
you
get
just won't sign the
I
form.
was confused by
Tell him somewhere along the line he got confused and thought it was, optional.
I would suggest, let him know that if he wants us to agree to his budget amounts, he'll have to present it to us.
That's pretty clear.
You could relay that to Paul. I mean, he could come in any time and then quickly go over,
They only have about 4 lines
yeah,
on the budget, the entire
So
budget.
we need it ahead of time to read.
It'd be very quick.
I think he could even come and just review it with us and then send us it later. So as long as we just see him, it doesn't necessarily, he has to be here at a certain point, but just so we get a perspective from him and do our duty, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, if all of a sudden they're paying themselves $100,000 a year for their work, we're not gonna agree to it now. There's some crazy amount. I'm sure there isn't. Knowing Paul, they're probably getting a very small sum. But nevertheless,
All right.
Do you think next month we'll have a meeting every week then?
I didn't
We'll
hear.
play
any-
it by, we'll play it by ear, see what happens. Yeah. We might have to, but. Motion to adjourn,
Second,
all in favor?
Hell yeah.
why, aye.
Thank you, everyone.
I've been up every night this week. I'm
This
tired.
is the third meeting I've had this week.
Yeah, I'm
It gets
tired.
hard, doesn't
I'm
it?
getting old.
Yeah.
I missed the meeting to this morning.